sounds crazy, but I was having a really hard time accepting my new normal. Like, again, maybe it's because I had my baby during the pandemic and everything changed. I just kept waiting for things to return to normal. Yes, I knew things would be a little different. This 2019 Nicaila was this Nicaila that I held up in my mind as like the epitome of me when I'm on it, right? The future is not behind you. The future is in front of you. So I can't both want to grow and want to accomplish all these new things and want my 2019 life like that. When you're setting off on any of your paths, or you're jumping into that car, getting ready to, start that dream, like it's believing. Like I never wanted to regret not trying. Hey, this is Nicaila Matthews Okome, and you're listening to Dreams in Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 308. Today, I am super excited to have Nicaila Matthews Okome back in the guest chair. We first chatted with Nicaila back in 2017, guys. So that was episode 99. If you want to go back and listen to where Nicaila was back then, please feel free to pause and go back and listen. But on today's episode, we're going to be diving into all things new with Side Hustle Pro and the journey that Nicaila has been on since we last spoken. And I am honored to have her update you all on navigating a new normal. I think it's something that we all can relate to. Nicaila is a mom like me. We both gave birth in 2020 and have just been navigating life since then. So there's so much that we catch up on, and there's so much that we reflect on as well. If this is your first time hearing of Nicaila, let me tell you a little bit more about her. In 2016, Nicaila launched the Side Hustle Pro podcast, which is the first and only podcast to spotlight bold Black women entrepreneurs who have scaled from side hustle to profitable businesses. The podcast has been featured on the Today Show, named to the Podcast Hall of Fame, and has amassed over 7 million downloads and a loyal social media following of inspiring entrepreneurs. And she's also the founder of Podcast Moguls, which is a podcast accelerator program for independent podcasters. Nicaila is a fellow Jamaican sister like myself. She was actually born in Jamaica, raised in the Bronx, and she's a fellow Ivy League alum. She graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. So I am really excited for you all to just hear about where she is today, what she's up to, and what advice she has for dream drivers who are looking to put their side hustle dreams in motion. And I think that her story and just her navigating everything that she's been going through for the past, 3-4 years is going to be inspiring. And there's so many dream driving lessons for us. So if you're listening, if you're encouraged, if you want to share this with other people, please make sure that you're following us on social media. We are Dreams in Drive across the board, and you can use the hashtag Dreams in Drive. I love seeing you guys posting on Instagram stories, especially. I always go back in and repost. And remember, if you want to join our Dreams in Drive community and get weekly email updates in your inbox, just go to dreamsindrive.com/join. That's dreamsindrive.com/join to sign up. All right, let's hear from Nicaila.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
I know, right? So Nicaila, for you guys, if this is your first time listening, Nicaila was actually our episode 99 guest all the way back in August of 2017. So that's like
crazy.
Almost 4.5 years ago. That's crazy, right?
Wait, girl, that was 5. Wait, what year are we in? 5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not.
It'll be my 5-year wedding anniversary. Yeah, almost. Oh, yeah.
But can you imagine? It doesn't seem like it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's also my wedding anniversary. And yeah, it doesn't seem like, it's been 5 years. So everyone keeps saying that, like, oh my God, has it been 5 years? Yeah.
It's funny, when I was re-listening, I was like, you know what though? Our voices are the same. I don't know why I thought like voices would change in 5 years, but
it's funny you say that because I feel like my voice has changed a little. When I listen back to my first episode, I'm like, what happened? How did my voice change? I think
it's also we got more confident in podcasting because at that time we were probably like a year into podcasting or a year and a half. So we still were just kind of learning how to get on, how to be on the mic and when we felt comfortable. So it's just interesting to think. So I have something for you though. So when I asked you in that episode, I asked you, like, what does being a dream driver mean to you? And one of the things that you said was, you said it means being proactive about creating the life that you want, right? And having a vision and going after it. How does it feel to hear that 5 years later, Nicaila? Like that was your mindset.
Oh, I feel proud. I feel proud that I was really, aware of that. And I was in tuned to that because I didn't remember that I said that, but it's so true. Like you have to be so proactive. And even when I was thinking through, the tips that I want to share today, when you kind of talked about that, you have that segment, and I thought about the mindset. Like that's the first thing that came to mind, really what you need to be feeling and thinking in order to get out there and go after your dreams. You really do have to be proactive. You have to go after it, and not in a cliche, hustle all day, all night kind of way, but in a determined, slow but steady, no matter how long it takes, understanding that this is something that is important to you and you're going to put in the work and it's going to happen.
Think of it like, if you could go back to 2017, Nicaila, right? Because you have imagined, there's so much stuff that happened, and we're going to talk through some of the major highlights, right? But just looking back, a bird's eye view, right? Like, what would you say to Nicaila back then, looking at where you are now?
Wow. So to Nicaila back then, I would keep telling myself something that I often say now, and it was something I had to say to myself around that time, but I didn't always believe it. But I would tell myself, like, rejection truly is God's protection. Like man's rejection is truly God's protection, because that Nicaila was still feeling some type of way about some of the rejections from jobs that she'd gotten, things that she felt she was overqualified for. And those rejections led me on the path to starting Side Hustle Pro. I was literally just thinking about this in my bathroom the other day. I would never have started blogging again if I wasn't unemployed, and if I wasn't trying to find my way. I wouldn't have needed to. I would have been at a job coasting because, the first place that I wanted to work at hired me. But because that didn't happen, I started to freelance. I started to tap back into my strengths. And that's what led me ultimately to start a podcast. So I truly believe that you just have to, take every rejection, everything that you thought you wanted that you didn't get, take it on the chin and understand that you are being pivoted, you're being redirected to somewhere else, like recalculating somewhere else.
Right, your GPS is like
that. GPS is like
they try to update you and say we're recalculating your route, right?
Yep. And you're wondering, you're like, why is it taking me this way? Like, what's going on that way? Don't worry about it.
Right. And I think too, just knowing a lot of the things that happened since 2017, you really bet on yourself and you took some big risk, right? We'll get into that. But let's talk about, so it was August 2017. I think when we were recording, we recorded, I think maybe in July or something. You were prepping for your wedding, right? And you were prepping for your honeymoon. And you were just talking about how there was so much stress going on. You didn't know how, if you'd be able to get through it. But I think that's a theme for both of us, right? There's so many things that we thought we probably wouldn't have been able to achieve, but we did. So looking back in 2017, going to 2018, do you remember a big accomplishment beyond getting married? Was there something that really stood out to you that you're like, wait, is this happening to me? Did you start seeing the success of Side Hustle Pro and it surprised you?
In 2017, I launched a podcast in June of 2016. So I was really ramping up around the time we spoke. I was doing a lot of stuff for the 1-year anniversary. And at that time, there was this company who existed that, let you do a one-off PR campaign. So I'd done this PR campaign and gotten the press hits like the Mashable. And, they came up with this headline, the best entrepreneurship podcast, which I couldn't have paid them for. I was like, this is the perfect headline that I need to do what I need to do. So around that time, seeing that kind of buzz, it really started to hit me like, wow, I'm really doing this. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's going to lead, but wow, I'm really, putting my all into this and I'm seeing the returns. And also I'd gone to a couple of conferences where I met people who I didn't even know who listened to the show. So that's always a moment where you're like, this there's someone out there listening. You see the downloads and you see your stats, but when you meet people who you don't know who are listening, that's when you start to see that your show is having an impact. And that was one of those moments where I realized, you know what, like this is really bigger than I think.
When did you quit NPR? When did you
I quit in December 2017. So exactly 2 years after I started working there.
Okay, no, that, I think that's another big, huge step in thinking about the side hustle pro progression to today, right?
Yep.
Why was quitting your job at NPR? Like, you're at this, people would say, girl, you made it, right? You're at like the
Yeah.
mega house of audio, right? How do you think quitting really helped propel your journey?
I got into a point where I was not even making that much with Side Hustle Pro. I was making a good amount, but it wasn't replacing my salary. That's what I should say. I wasn't replacing my salary, but I was at a point where my time was torn, and I had to make that call of, okay, I'm making this amount, I'm making thousands on my own as a side hustler with a side hustle. Imagine how much I could be making if I do it full time. And so I spent the latter part of 2017 really testing out and cementing some revenue streams, because I didn't want to be one of those people who said that and then after I left was looking around like,
I need money.
I need money. Where's it coming from? So I spent the fall just testing out different things, like ramping up sponsorships. I was pitching like 100 sponsors a week, just trying to secure some contracts.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I was just writing down lists of people and sending out, because at this point, I was sending cold emails. So it was nothing to like change out the name and the email, a few lines about why I love their company and send it off. And so I was going hard on that. I was starting to create my own program. So I developed and tested my first course ever. So I was doing all of that. And that's when I knew, all right, I'm ready to go after this. I believed in myself. Once I saw that I could do that, I could secure a sponsorship on my own. I could, have students enroll and want to learn from me, because I can put together a really thoughtful educational program about things that I know, whether that's podcasting, side hustling, social media marketing. And so that's when I knew I was ready.
Where do you think that hustle came from? Because, like, you ever look back at your old self and you're like, girl, where'd you get that energy from, right? And for me, I know we're both moms now, right? So, like, our time is so much different. But looking back, like, what do you think was motivating you to just, like, not even think about what wouldn't happen, but you really were focused on, I'm going to make this happen?
I think I went through a pivotal moment in around, like, this was before I launched. So around like the summer of 2015, when I'd graduated from business school and I didn't have a job. And I touched on it a little bit a second ago, but, I kept applying and I kept getting rejected. And I just, and I'm a sensitive person. So I wasn't just getting rejected, but I was crying. I was upset. I was, feeling really down on myself. And I just reached a breaking point where I said, I'm never giving anyone the power to make me feel like this anymore. Even when I get a job, I'm just never wrapping my sense of worth and sense of talent up in a company, because I felt what was so defeating to me is because I felt like that meant I wasn't smart or good enough at the time. And even though now, in hindsight, looking back, that was so silly. And I was able to talk myself through that. At the time, those were some of the things I was really going through. And anyone out there who's listening, who, you're applying for jobs and you're getting rejections, or you're applying for schools and you're getting rejections, it's hard to separate the rejection from that role from like the rejection of you, the person. So I reached that point where I said, I'm never fooling with these companies and letting them make me feel less than, right? So I still wanted a job, of course, to pay my bills. But by the time I got my role at NPR, shout out to NPR, because I really needed that job. But by the time I got that role, I had that wall up where I knew I was going to go in there. I was going to handle my business. I was going to be, I was going to work hard, but I wasn't going to get attached. So it's kind of like, I guess, in a
Like no
relationship where
feelings.
yeah, I wasn't not going to get attached. Okay. So I didn't have that attachment of like, this is a role where I want to, climb the ladder and become the VP. I didn't have that attachment to it. So that was number one of where I got the guts. And the second part of it was I had just spent so much time then around entrepreneurial people, and I wanted to experience it for myself, not in a how things are like romanticized kind of way, but I knew that I had a viable idea. I knew that I had talent. I knew that I was going to take it seriously. And I said, why not me? I know what it takes. So I, at that point, just had the guts of like, what do you have to lose in life? Like, I never wanted to regret not trying.
I love that. Did you, at this point, what were some of the big investments you were making in yourself? It could be through the business, personally, because I feel like part of ramping up, part of being a dream driver is being willing to invest in, and not even monetarily, right? It could just be like focusing in on prioritizing. Like, what were some of those big prioritizations for you?
During this period, so the biggest investment I made, I still remember it because, it was at the time the largest investment I made in myself. So I took this 2-day sponsorship intensive, which was $1,197. And it was
at 97, it was a course, yeah, right?
I know it was a course. I remember it because it was like such a gasp moment for me at the time. Remember at this point, I'd just been working for about a year full time for NPR. I was still, getting my savings back up after having been a broke student for 2 years and during grad school and all of that. So, money, and then, getting ready for a wedding. So I was at the time highly sensitive around money. But then I also felt like this was before I started pitching my business. This is before I started to reach out to sponsors to sponsor Side Hustle Pro. And I was like, I need to learn this sponsorship game. I was looking for something that was on podcast sponsorship, but I couldn't find it. So this was the closest thing I could get. And I said, all right, I believe in myself, and I believe that I can take this information and then, get some sponsorship. So if all I do is make back this $1,197, then this will be worth it. So I decided to invest in that. And, from there, it was a matter of, really, at the time, I was investing in knowledge. I was investing in people. So whereas the beginning of my life, it was all about investing in college and things like that. Yeah. Once you graduate, you realize that you still do need to invest in your education, and you have to do it on your terms. You have to figure out and research who is legitimate, what are they teaching, what makes them qualified to teach. And so I was investing in programs like that. The next big investment, I did take a course about how to make a really good course from none other than Danielle Leslie, who I've had on my show because I knew I wanted to launch a serious program and not just like a one-off course. So that was another big investment. And once I had gotten to a point where, because I'm big on just-in-time learning, meaning I don't just buy courses and not go through them. I only buy courses right when I have the focus to go through it. I won't say the time because none of us have the time, right? But the focus, like, I'm going to make the time and fit this in between stuff, because this is what I'm focused on right now. So those were two of the biggest expenses. I didn't invest in a whole bunch of equipment going into podcasting, as you guys should know, like, you don't need a lot to get started. So I started with at the beginning, maybe like a $30 microphone. Then I scaled up to like $100 one. I had my laptop and I wasn't doing video. So it was real bare bones there. And now it's grown.
At this point, like, where were you seeing like, okay, I'm making these investments, like Side Hustle Pro could really be this? What was that vision for you at this point? Since you were so big on vision, right? Like, what was your mindset around where you saw the brand growing or where you wanted the brand to grow?
At that point, I was big on measuring milestones, like my key performance indicators, as you like to talk about. My KPIs were very much matched to industry milestones. So there were certain charts that I wanted Side Hustle Pro to appear on. There were certain download milestones that I wanted to meet so that I could get a certain number of sponsorship. Like, sponsors look at how many downloads you have per episode. So on the technical, numbers, analytical side, those were some of the things that I had in my vision. And that was just because I saw myself being able to earn a certain amount per month from Side Hustle Pro. And so I knew that, getting Side Hustle Pro to grow and be on these charts would be what enabled me to do that. And so my vision was just to keep growing it as big as I possibly could, to continue to do as much as I can to market the show, to promote the show each and every week like it was the first episode, and to keep growing it from there.
Dream Drivers, you do it all without breaking a sweat. Like being a boss exec to Tuesday tennis to homework. Why do the kids even have so much homework? Family dinners, lunches, brunches, trips to the vet, and a weekend getaway that's anything but a getaway. And you do it all in style. Even when you have back-to-back conference calls on top of the kids' orchestra recitals, not to mention your side hustle. That's why we created the fully reimagined Infiniti QX60, a luxury SUV as functional as it is stylish and as versatile as it is serene. With premium features like a panoramic moonroof, ample cargo space, and available massaging front seats to bring the ease of luxury to your everyday. Introducing the all-new Infiniti QX60, designed to help you take on life and all the chaos that may come with it in style. Learn more at InfinitiUSA.com. Now with extremely limited availability, contact your local retailer for inventory information.
COVID-19 moves fast, and now you can too. If you feel symptoms, even if they're mild, you should test fast. Test positive and at high risk for severe COVID-19? Then act fast with authorized oral treatments that can be taken at home and must be taken within 5 days from when symptoms begin. COVID-19 moves fast, and now you can too by asking your healthcare provider if an oral treatment is right for you. Learn about a treatment option at treatcv19.com. This message is sponsored by Pfizer.
So I know, and I think we talked about it. So by the time this episode goes live, I think I will have already been on your podcast, right? And one of the conversations that we had was this idea of, not the idea of when you decided to do Side Hustle Pro Live, right? I think, was it October 2019?
October 2019, yep.
Yeah, I'm like, dang, that was a long time ago too, right? That was 2 years ago. But so October 2019, you had your first ever live event, Side Hustle Pro Live, right, in Washington, D.C. What was that scary for you? Being on stage, like what was, I know the answer, right? But our listeners may not know the answer. And just as a caveat here, guys, so Nicaila hired me to be her live event producer. This is my first time producing like a live podcast. We were a great team and we made it work. You can go back and see all the footage.
Raina did amazing. Yeah.
But it was a phenomenal night, right? Like you had sponsors, you had a VIP room. It was just beautiful. But like going into it, were you nervous to embark on this new journey? Like, what was that mind? Like, what was in your mind at this time? Like, did Nicaila 2017 think she'd be in the live, have her own show yet at this point?
Yeah, I was terrified. Nobody was going to show up.
Girl, people wanted to show up even after, right? Like people were trying to get tickets up until.
Yeah, which I was nervous. Like, especially in the beginning, people buy tickets last minute. So when you first put out the Eventbrite and you have registrations going up and it's trickling in, you're like, oh my God, did I make a mistake? But the Nicaila of 2017 didn't even imagine that would be a thing, that would be a possibility where I would have a live show and brands would come, simply because I had never experienced it. And so it's really true. You can't be what you don't see. So it wasn't until I went to a live show, at the time I was living in the Washington, D.C. area, and I went to Getting Grown podcasted their live show. And it was actually a coworker of mine who was like, oh, you want to go to this? And I was like, oh, cool. This looks really good. And so we went. That's where I met Kia and Jade for the first time and saw it. My live show ended up taking place at that exact same auditorium, because when I was there and I was experiencing it and them being able to talk directly to their listeners, I said, this is amazing. Like, I had never even listened to their podcast yet at that moment, because again, my coworker told me about it. Yeah. So I wasn't even all the way in the loop on like the audience. And I said, this is awesome. Like, I want to do this. But still at the time I was like, well, I don't have a co-host. Like, how am I going to carry this by myself? That's what I was thinking. Like, what am I going to talk about on stage for people to pay money to come see? So it took a lot of getting out of my own way and getting into the right mindset. Mindset is everything, because I had to remove that doubt in my head that I can't do this. I can't carry the show. Live shows are only for comedy shows or, comedy podcasts and all that kind of stuff, to order to even start to embark on that process. And getting the right team in place is so critical as well, because having you and being able to bounce ideas, and you being able to be like, yeah, this is gonna be great, and we should think about this and we should think about that, like that just made it all come together.
And it's funny here, unexpected things can happen, right? In the midst of blessings, more blessings. So I think during the planning of, the live show, you found out you were pregnant, right?
Yes.
And I'm using that theme here because, like, a good thing could happen, right? And then something unexpected, which is also a good thing, happens, but it also complicates things a little bit, right? Because it's like, wow, now you have to think about you're pregnant, and you didn't tell us until after. And the whole time during the planning, I'm like, Nicaila's acting kind of funny. Like, why is she, there were so many things. I'm like, she's being very picky here, but you know what? I'm just going to be good.
I know. I was like, Raina is going to hate me. She's not going to want to work with me ever again. Like, she's going to be like, I was in my first trimester, not telling anybody because it's the first trimester.
Yeah.
So I was tired. I didn't want to answer any questions. I just went to sleep. So Raina's calling me in between naps, and I'm like,
but you know what? I think it was a good, it was a good for both of us, even for me, as like, this is my first time being a producer. You have to understand, like, this is your client, but at the end of the day, you have to then like step in where she may not be able to step in at this moment. So I had to start trusting my own gut of like, girl, you don't have to ask her every single approval for things. Just go ahead, make the executive decision, tell her what's going to get done. And in the end, it will be good. So I think it all worked out. But another thing happened then. So we're thinking, all right, this first live show was the bomb. Maybe we'll have another one in 2020.
I'm thinking about the summer 2020.
Once the baby's born, we're gonna be back out here in these streets. The streets called and said, "Yo, we canceling the streets." This we thought, right?
For I think for many of us, years.
For the many of us, we thought that like the pandemic would be okay. It'll be like, a few weeks, a few months, maybe a year, right? We're still here. But I think for us, for 2020, it was a year of change for you and I both, because we became mothers. And we also had to still have our podcast, running it full time. For you, what was that biggest shift? What was the biggest surprise about how motherhood shaped your perspective on life and business? Because I think that's the next big chapter in your life, right? Was Nicaila the mom, Nicaila the podcast, Nicaila the business person, but she's still a mom, right? It's hard to kind of escape that hat, but also still wear the other hats.
So, I don't think let me see, how do I want to answer that?
Be real. No, I'll be real, girl. It's hard. It's so why are you thinking it's hard being a mom and other things? It's hard.
No. Man, it's definitely hard. It's definitely 1,000 times harder than I ever expected. And I didn't realize how much I would go through mentally. And I will never, ever know what motherhood is like outside of a pandemic, right?
That's
another thing. Like,
and you had your son
my
at the beginning, like right in the beginning.
Right at the beginning, April 2020. So much was going on in the world. Emotionally, I'll never know if the things I experienced was results of being a pandemic mom or just a mom or what have you. So it took me a long time. My son just turned 2. It took me a long time to just get my emotions to a place where sometimes I didn't even feel ready to share. So I used to do a lot more solo episodes, and I just didn't know where to begin. Sometimes people are like, oh, moms will relate to you more now. Talk about your journey. And it's like, I'm still in it. I don't have nothing to share. I don't have no advice to give. It's just hard.
That's real.
So it changed me fundamentally because, of course, I have more empathy. I have more understanding now of moms with children. I always say, sorry, that meme, like, sorry to my friends who I used to try to give advice to, or I used to say whatever to when you had babies. Like, I didn't know what I was talking about. So I have a way more empathy and understanding, which lends itself really well to doing things like the fact that I teach, podcasters now, and I'm able to understand the reservations that a mom might have who's starting a podcast and things like that. But it made me, it's making me a better entrepreneur for sure. It's
How
forcing
so?
me. Well, it's it's forcing me to be more thoughtful in my decisions in what I take on and the why. So even when it comes to partnerships or affiliate partnerships or something like that, or speaking engagements, like now it's through the lens of, am I going to, is this worth leaving my son for
Right.
X amount of days? Like, do I want to do that? Like everything is through that lens. Or I only have limited time. So do I want to spend it promoting someone else's business, or do I want to invest all of that time into, growing my own business? So, everything is viewed through that lens of my shortened time and how much I want to make sure that I'm spending the time wisely with my son.
This episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by This Is L. Hey, my lady dream drivers. As a lot of you may know, I'm all about keeping it natural and keeping it healthy. And as a dream driver, I believe it is so important for us to take care of our mind, souls, and bodies. And the one time of the month that some of us may forget to do that is that time of the month, aka period time. So meet This Is L, period care inspired by nature. This Is L has a 100% organic cotton core. L tampons are organic cotton without that organic price. L is the #1 cotton brand in feminine care in the US, and it's made for everyone. Their tagline is, "We may not all look the same, but we are all created equal. So let's treat every person, every body, every vagina with love." L is for loving your body with clean and simple period care, free from synthetic pesticides and dyes. So as we're on this dream driving journey, let's invest in our feminine health, guys. If you're in the market for new feminine products, visit thisisl.com to learn more. Yeah, and I think for me too, it's something I haven't done, but I probably should, is you also realize things you can just outsource to give yourself more time
Oh
back, right?
yeah. Oh
So I know
yeah.
for you, you've always been a queen of I'm going to get the team. I'm not going to try to be editing my episodes no more. I'm not going to even try to do that, right? So I commend you for that.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was thinking about something when you were talking, and it's this idea of embracing new change, right? I think that's just something that when you have any big change, when you wanted to do the live events, you had to think about, all right, this is new for me. Motherhood was
Yep.
new for me,
Yep.
right? What else became new for you post 2020 and onward, right? Was there something else that you had to embrace, this new mindset or this new normal for you? What was that?
Yes. I had to embrace moving forward into the new normal. So we touched on
Let's
this a
talk
little
about that.
in our mastermind. So Raina and I, and 3 other women, 5 of us total, right? Or yeah, 5 of us total are in this podcast mastermind together that we just developed organically. And so we'll check in and we'll talk with each other, business, personal. So the last time on the personal update front, I talked about something. I've shared this with my sisters and my husband, of course. Everyone who knows me knows that I was having a really hard time accepting. It sounds crazy, but I was having a really hard time accepting my new normal. Like, again, maybe it's because I had my baby during the pandemic and everything changed. I just kept waiting for things to return to normal. Yes, I knew things would be a little different, but my mind just kept thinking yes, but once he starts daycare, then I'll be like the 2019 Nicaila. This 2019 Nicaila was this Nicaila that I held up in my mind as the epitome of me when I'm on it, right? And I had to understand and really come to terms with the fact that that Nicaila is gone. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but that Nicaila wasn't a mom. There's a new Nicaila now, and there's a new me and a new life now. And that's okay. I heard something just today actually that really encapsulates it. And it's like, the future is not behind you. It sounds so simple, but the future is not behind
I'm trying to
you.
visualize that. The
Yeah,
future.
the future
I'm
is in
thinking, how
front
could
of
the
you.
future be behind
Yeah,
you?
the
Right?
future is in front of you. So I can't both want to grow and want to accomplish all these new things and want my 2019 life. Like that doesn't gel together. I have to accept that what's coming is greater. It might not feel good at times because I'm letting go of what I once knew, and change is scary. Change is different. You start to romanticize and, just look back and want for the past, the good parts of the past, but you have to recognize that what's coming is in front of you and it's going to be great as well. So that was my biggest thing. I'm still working through that. I'm at the tail end of it, I think, but really, really accepting like this is a new normal, that we're not going back to, XYZ once he starts daycare. Like, you're always going to have a kid.
You about to pull out your 2019 clothes, like, all right, shoes, all right, 2019
all right, friends,
shirt.
Let's go to brunch. Like, no. You're still going to have a kid who, your life is going to revolve around, and, revolving around school schedule and all of that. and so that is a big shift. That's a huge mental shift.
Did you feel like a weight was lifted, or you had some kind of relief once you said, all right, I'm gonna accept it? Like what was, how did you feel when you finally realized I don't have to hold on to that anymore?
It felt, it was a huge relief. It was a shift. It was understanding. It was actually a trust. It was trusting, God has not failed me yet. Okay. And I can sometimes get caught up in my own world, but when I look backwards at all the things like that, have happened in my life, like things just tend to work out. And so I need to keep remembering that and, just trusting. So it was really more of like a trust. Like, I don't know what's happening in terms of the world. Like, I don't know why this had to happen. I don't know, why in terms of the panorama. I don't know why that had to happen, but I'm trusting that the new world that we're in, it's allowing for bigger and better things. So, like, for example, we've always done virtual podcasts, and now more and more people embraced it during the pandemic. So, it kind of gave more awareness to what we were doing all this time. And so, there's a lot of positive things that came from it. And of course, people are returning back to in person and doing all of that. But I like the fact that more people saw what you can do from your very own house and, from your very own closet office.
Right.
It just legitimized it in a new way that I think opens up even more doors and more opportunities for shows to book you, for you to be a guest on Today's Show, Good Morning America, wherever.
I was going to say that because I was thinking, the irony is, right? Maybe Nicaila may have wanted to return to 2019 Nicaila, but you probably wouldn't have wanted to return to 2019 podcast, right? Because you had all this dope stuff happening after and beyond, all this growth, like from a revenue standpoint, from just opportunity standpoint. So there were a lot of like things in the podcast that were going on. Can you talk to our dream drivers a little bit about like the major lessons on growth from just building a brand, from building Side Hustle Pro that you learned, or maybe just some cool things that happened to you and the lesson behind that? Like, for example, in 2020, when did you go on the Today Show? Was that 2020?
That was 2019.
That was 2019.
That was 2019.
Okay, sorry.
I'll joke.
But just from like a revenue standpoint, sponsorship standpoint, right? Like, it's funny because we were in that episode 99, we talked about like, we think that people are going to try to get into podcasting, right? They're going to see just how, the space is going to get tighter. And it kind of did because so many people started launching a podcast, but you still have been able to really stay on top in this niche, right? So talk to us about like, how were you able to really make sure you're sustaining growth?
I love that question. It's so funny that we said that in the episode because I always saw that podcasting was going to just keep on growing. I also, at the time, was still working at NPR. So I saw it day in and day out at work. And then, of course, we were doing independent podcasts, but I saw how much was being invested in the industry and how much was being planned around it. And there were times when even I would still get a little nervous because I was like, oh man, so many people are getting into this. And then I had to remind myself that that's a good thing. I think of podcasts like people as no different than the film industry, as no different than the television industry. There are always going to be new shows. There are always going to be new films because people want to be entertained. And podcasting is entertainment. And I'm glad that more people are seeing that and investing more into that, because that means there's more money to be made. There's more opportunity to be had by us and by all of you. I think everyone should start a podcast. Okay. And come to me if you want to start your
podcast moguls. You can plug your course right now.
Join. No, but seriously. There's so much opportunity. And as creators, which we all are in some sense, whether you're creating a physical products or you're creating what you do day in and day out at your 9 to 5, we're all creators, right? And the more we harness our powers and realize what we could be doing and making money off of, the more we can have more choice and more ownership and more structure around our future. I think sometimes side hustling or entrepreneurship gets a bad rap because there's this image and reputation that is unstable, which it can be, don't get me wrong. But as we all saw, especially during the last 2 years, so can working for a company that suddenly just goes under. So side hustling at least allows you to keep your other skills fresh so that if you need to, in a bind, you can make money some other way. So like, again, I went through that kind of aha moment when I kept getting rejected and said, I'm never going to put all my eggs in one basket and start working a job and then just completely forget everything else that I could do. I told myself I would never do that again. Not that I would never get a job again, because if I need to, I will. Like, the Okome family is all about side hustling and the different paths that we need to fulfill our dreams. However, we will always side hustle because we recognize that we got to be investing in ourselves. We got to be, because there's no such thing as stability in any particular path.
I was going to ask you then, what's that side hustle pro magic, right? You know how they have like hashtag Black Girl Magic? Like if you could really brag on what makes Side Hustle Pro so special and what makes you so special as a host, what is that?
Well, Side Hustle Pro is so special because we are centering our stories, the stories of Black women who have scaled from side hustlers to full-time entrepreneurs. You don't find that anywhere else, where our stories are amplified and you're able to see how someone who looks just like you, who has a path just like you, who, reminds you of your cousin, who went to the same schools you did or has the same hobbies as you do, was able to grow a business, sometimes from their kitchen, sometimes, from their closet, and able to share with you what they did, what they thought about. Now, it's only an hour show, so you can't leave after listening and then copy, replicate every single step that they did. But you start to understand the mindset that you need. And again, that is the key thing when you're setting off on any of your paths, or you're jumping into that car, getting ready to, start that dream. Like, it's believing. It's believing. It's recognizing that nobody on the show is any different than you. There's nobody who, they were born here, so of course they could do that, or they have money, so of course they could do that. That's not the case. Like, everybody is a human being who started at zero and grew from there.
Do you think the key also is like something why what makes the show so successful is because you really did hone in on your audience and you weren't trying to speak to everybody? You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes for a lot of us, we think, all right, it's not working, I'm gonna just try to switch this, or I'm gonna switch that. But you really, over the past 6 years that your show has been in existence, you've never gave up on your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have. I don't know. Have you?
No, no, not at all. So my biggest tip to anyone who wants to start a podcast or any platform where your targeted audience is to hone in on the person that you're speaking to. Because even the word audience can be kind of broad. You're speaking to a person, you're speaking to someone, and they have a name, they have occupation, they have things that they like to do, and it's up to you to figure that out so you know how to reach them across different platforms. So a lot of people want to fight this. They don't want to believe it's true. They're like, I want to talk to all this or all that. And the fact of the matter is that when you look at the content that you become a super fan of, not just things you consume passively or, occasionally, but when you become super engrossed in content, it's usually content that has been tailored for you in some way or another. And tailoring doesn't have to be by race. People get caught up in that because of who my audience is and my person is. It doesn't have to be by race, but you need to hone in on something specific about the person that you're talking to, because then more and more people like that person will start to gravitate to your show because they recognize it's for them. And so I've never strayed from that because I've always wanted my show to grow and that audience to grow, and for people to immediately be able to recognize that the show is for them and latch onto it and share the word.
And listen, it has grown, right? Because I know when we spoke in 2017, we mentioned, I think you were only like 30,000 followers on Instagram, and now you're 80,000. I think you had like passed the 1 million. Did you pass the 1 million download mark 2017? And now you're like past, where are you now?
I can't remember when I did each mark, but we're at 6.5 downloads now. So we're going to close in
million,
on 7.
Right?
6.5 million downloads. We're closing in on 7 soon. And I really attribute that to consistency, and to also, I always promote my show like it's still new, like people haven't heard of it, because so many people haven't. It's funny being an independent podcast and now being in a space where I'm starting to talk to major representation and
you
networks
a celebrity
and things
now.
like
you
that.
A celebrity.
What's funny is that there are different bubbles of podcasting. So you might feel like a big shot in your pool, your bubble, and then you go and talk to someone who has 7 million downloads per episode, for example, right? And it's not to knock your own progress, because again, we should all run our own races, but we should also recognize the possibilities, and there's always room for growth. So while I am absolutely proud of myself, and I, clap for myself and all that I've done, I'm also ambitiously driving towards that next level of awareness and podcasting where I'm doing millions in downloads per episode.
Yep. We speaking it into existence, right? And I feel like I'm just so happy for our group. You mentioned that we're in a mastermind with Jamila of Journey to Launch, Art Steele, Dr. Joy, Therapy for Black Girls, and it's me and you. And I just feel like we have been such an encouragement. I know seeing you guys continue and just making all this like success and growth within your own platforms has encouraged me with Dreams and Drive to just keep going. Because as you know, many a times I'm like, yo, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know what I'm doing.
And we all need a break sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I took many a break in 2020 and did my rewind episodes because it was like that.
So as we wind down, Nicaila, I want to ask you, right? I don't think I've asked anyone this question. So imagine you're in the front seat of your car, right? Right? No, you can follow me here, right?
Okay.
What kind of driver are you? And I'm saying that, like, what's your approach to your dream driving journey now, 2022?
It's funny because I'm thinking of literally what kind of driver I am when I'm in a car, and then I'm thinking of my journey. So let me just process that for a second.
No problem.
I think the two do correlate though. So I am a cautious driver. Some might not recognize that because when you see someone become an entrepreneur, you think they have a high risk tolerance and all this other stuff. But I am a cautious, strategic decision maker. I evaluate many options. I weigh the pros and cons. I'm always thinking about what route will will provide me with some level of comfort. I don't love discomfort. I'm not going to put myself in an uncomfortable situation. For example, one where I'm struggling, looking for my next check,
and that's
desperate.
real.
Yeah,
like that whole narrative about you got to be a risk taker, be broke,
yeah,
living outside in a shack.
not
No,
me,
no, no,
not me.
not me either. I love that. I love that.
So that's the kind of driver I am. If you see me on the road, know that you are safe and I am safe. Okay. But we are going to go out there and still, we're going to get it, and I'm going to have, yeah, I was about to say, and my car is going to be clean. It's going to be nice. It's going to be dope.
It's gonna be together. Like I feel like that's
I'm
also
going to be
something
together. I'm going to be together.
You don't have to follow like it doesn't have to be chaotic, right? And I think
Yes.
sometimes there's this
Yeah.
hustle culture of like
Yeah.
grind and
Uh-huh.
hustle and being chaotic where it doesn't always have to be like that.
I don't like chaos. I don't like chaos. And I'm willing to steadily, slowly grow over some chaotic, fast craziness. And of course, this is all nuance. I'm not saying it's either or, but sometimes you see that a lot. And I still love the word hustle. Side hustle pro is, that name ain't going anywhere, but people, they try to throw shade on the word hustle. It's not so much the hustle is the problem. It is the how we illustrate and the how we define hustle. I've always been big on defining it for myself. You got to define your path for yourself. So before I launched and still after, there are lots of side hustle podcasts, but I've always defined side hustle for myself.
All right, Nicaila. So if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So can you tell us 3 things that you think every dream driver needs before they hit the road?
3 things that you need before you hit that road. Number 1, you need to get your mindset together. So mindset is so key. And what I mean by that is you need to be aware that you're going to have doubts creep in. You're going to, have people question you, and you have to recognize that you're going to continually have to reprogram your mind. It's not like, oh, adopt this mindset and you're good. No, you're going to have to continually speak over yourself and encourage yourself and, be prepared to combat all of those doubts and all those people. So number 1, get your mindset and the, the attitude that you're going to keep working on your mindset. Number 2, get yourself a loose schedule. So this doesn't mean to be overly like, oh, strict. I side hustle from this hour to this hour. Everybody knows that, schedules are subject to change, especially when you are side hustling, because sometimes you can't control what comes up at work, when you have to work late, all of that good stuff. But set a loose schedule so that, okay, Saturdays from 8 to 12 generally is my time to side hustle. Now, if something comes up, if I got a baby shower to go to, then I will change it to this time. But always change it, right? Always buffer in room to switch your side hustling hours for the week sometime else, but have a rough schedule for the weeks when it's a little bit more manageable. And then finally, keep a notebook with you. Early
Side
in my
Hustle
journey,
Pro one?
A Side Hustle Pro notebook. Come over to sidehustleshop.co. That should be out soon. But any notebook really, like it doesn't have to be a Side Hustle Pro one. Even if you're like, oh, I'm not a writer, I'm not a journaler. I'm not telling you to journal, but your ideas are going to start coming fast and furious. You have to jot them down. You have to revisit them. You'll be amazed at the things you look back at as ideas that you had that you actually put into fruition. So for me, things like a live show, things like appearing on, the Today Show, things like hitting certain download markers, 6 million downloads, things like, getting into the Hall of Fame. All of these things were things I wrote down. And so write down your dreams, check them off, revisit them, write yourself a letter even, and close off that page and go back to it a year from now, because these things are so critical, putting that out in the atmosphere. And you don't always want to tell someone, but tell yourself, write it to yourself and revisit it. So those are my 3 key things: mindset, schedule, notebook.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Nicaila. And I have to ask you this because I asked you it on the last episode. What are your thoughts on legacy? Like now you have a son, right? Like I feel like that changes the future, right? Now that you're driving front seat, it's you and Moyo, you got Kingston in the back, right? It's like, what's legacy now for you?
So legacy for me is leaving behind just a blueprint of how to live life with an open mind, a belief that you can grow, so a growth mindset, so to speak. So there's this concept of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. So a growth mindset, you know that you have to keep learning, you have to keep growing, and with that you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. So that's the number one legacy that I want to leave my family, my future kids, and my current kid. And
Not just the future one.
Right. I know I'm talking like I didn't have them yet, but
Oh no, I love that. I love that.
yeah. And of course, I want to set my legacies up financially and all of that. So but it's also leaving behind the tools and the insights into how we did that so that it can continue. And it's not just like, oh, you have this money, you've inherited all this great stuff. No, like how do you become this mentally? How do you become this financially, and leaving behind all of that kind of outline? So I see myself writing and audio recording, definitely a lot of notes to my legacies.
Well, thank you so much for gracing Dreams and Drive for the second time, Nicaila. Tell our
Thank you for
dream
having me
drivers where they
back.
can find you online if they want to, follow you and know what's next for Side Hustle
Yes.
Pro.
So you can find me online everywhere at Side Hustle Pro. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, everywhere. And you can find the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube. Just search Side Hustle Pro. And our website is sidehustlepro.co. And with that, there you have it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Nicaila. All right, so that's a wrap for episode 308 with Nicaila Matthews Okome. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you enjoyed this episode, you know what to do. Please share it with your own community. You can find us across the board at Dreams and Drive. You can also use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure to post this episode to your Instagram stories, especially. Tell people you're listening about it, and I'll go back in and repost and reshare because I love to do that. As always, I'm always looking for new stories to share on the show. So if you're inspired, if you feel like, hey, I have a story that would be great for our dream driving audience, you can always pitch the show 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. That's dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. And then lastly, guys, make sure that you're subscribed wherever you're listening. If you like this episode and you want to get notified when the next episode is live, that's the best way to do it. So make sure you're subscribed, and also make sure you're on our email list. That's also the best way to stay up to date with all things Dreams and Drive. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join to sign up. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we will chat again in episode 309. Bye, guys.